It's Monday morning, and it's time for relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. Hi, Medicinal Shy Guy. Yeah, you should not be excited because this is relaxing painting. But there it is. More like exciting. Okay. Yeah, it's good. Thank you for narrating what you're seeing on the screen. Well, what we're going to be doing this morning is more dungeon tiles. There's a couple of things we'll be starting with. One is, and these are kind of cool, as you might have recalled, if I can get the camera more or less there. One of the dungeons has traps, and what that means is that there's this looks like a wall tile. Okay. You put it next to another one. This one's been washed. This one hasn't. So I'll be doing more of that later. So, you know, you're walking along here, through your dungeon, and the DM says, you know, you should be checking for traps, but you didn't. So you spring a trap. And what these tiles let you do, which is really pretty cool, is you can, both sides, just plain wall. Right, you just sprung a trap. And out of this vent, which I will be painting in later, will either come a flame or a gas cloud. These are attached by magnets. Okay. And the DM has, depending on how your dungeon is set up, yes, you don't even need to get closer. You don't have to be really close. You can just be like 5 feet away because it's a really big flame that comes out of here. The DM has a choice. If you can't see the back from where all the players are, you can put on the trap tile and rotate it. That springs the trap. But if you can see the back, you don't want to give away the fact that there's a trap there, so you use the plain wall tile and swap them out. So that's how the trap works. What I'm going to be doing today is starting out by painting the highlight blocks. As you recall, I was using a brown color to paint the highlight blocks. And so I'm going to be doing that with the wall tiles, and I'm going to set those aside to dry. And then after those are done and they're drying, I'm going to be doing some more washing. And what we have here is a pretty much completed necromancy layer kind of setting. And all of these tiles need to be washed with this dark gray wash, just like this one is. The reason this one is out is that when I did the washing last week, Wednesday, missed the top. So I'll keep this out here so I can remember. Now, these walls, you know, I just been, as you may have noticed when you look at them there, I just sort of pick things out. You know, when I was doing highlights, I would pick anywhere from like 3 to 5 on each tile, and they'd just be sort of random and haphazard. But it has to be different here because these are, in terms of gameplay, the same wall. So, for example, if you were to swap them out, this and this are exactly the same wall. And there's 2 of these in the dungeon set. And it's possible that what you might end up doing is you just grab one. So these can be interchangeable. So these 4 will all have the same pattern of highlight blocks. And I don't know what that'll be yet. We'll find out. Okay, so these 4 will be highlighted the same way. See what paint on the mixer. Makes a lovely buzzing sound. Vibrates the inside of these little things, and it's way more efficient than shaking them. Get our cork brown paint out here. And start by carefully, just sort of haphazardly selecting the blocks that'll be highlighted. So let's do one here. These. Same ones on each block, each wall. And then, of course, turn them all over and get the same ones on the other side. I'm done marking these. I guess I should do a flip. It's as requested, flip. So I hope you all had a decent weekend. Ours was fairly quiet here. This was doing a lot of work outside. We got some additional Christmas lights. Let's see what else. Drained the hot tub and refilled it with clean water. What can I flip? There's nothing really good to flip here. I have a pen. I found this. Rotate it. Both boxes there. Yeah, I need to come better prepared, but it's a Monday morning, so can't expect too much in terms of flippability. So we're gonna paint these highlight blocks. Now you might say, well, that looks pretty scabby, and it in fact it does look pretty scabby. That's the vent for the trap, either the gas cloud or the flame. That's actually going to be painted brass, but I'm going to paint that after I do the washing, because otherwise the wash will get on it and make it look messy. So I think I can probably get away with not getting the brass paint all over places I don't want it. Anyway, it should work better after the wash, because when I do the wash, I like to brush across the entire surface to make sure that it's, more or less uniform and even, not just on that particular block, but that it's fairly uniform from one dungeon tile to the next, because when you put them all next to each other in a set, or if you mix and match the pieces from different sets, or if you just happen to have some extra dungeon tiles laying around, you want to do some sort of custom thing, you want them to look like they belong together. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. The brass on the trap vent at the end after the washing, so that I could, like I said, brush across the surface of the entire dungeon tile wall. Monday, I slept terribly well last night. I'm just going to move along. We got a slow and deliberate pace today. Basically, making it relaxing. For me, at least. Really like this, I probably need to come up with some sort of narrative. So, last few days we've covered fractions and percentages. Yeah, it was kind of fun. We talked about the weather. Can't really talk about, religion or politics, because I don't want to offend anybody one way or the other, unless we're offending people by not talking about religion and politics. It's just kind of that's the Thanksgiving trope, right? Is if you're going to argue about something, you stick to football. And of course, right now, if you say, well, we're just going to stick to football and argue, you could not only argue about like specific teams, but you could even argue kind of a meta argument about what is really football. Okay? Because the World Cup is going on, and a lot of people would claim that what they are playing is football. But in the U.S., for some reason, I never bothered finding out. Maybe somebody there can share or not about why we call it soccer when the whole rest of the world calls it football. So yeah, so you all get together for Thanksgiving, which was like a little more than a week ago now. That time went fast, didn't it? Yeah, and you can argue about football, including what football really is. You can argue about there's all sorts of stuff going on now, isn't there? There's the NFL, of course, and there's hardly any really good teams this year. It's really odd. There's some teams with really good records, like the Minnesota Vikings. They've only lost like 2 games. But the Philadelphia Eagles, they seem to actually be a good team. But okay, that's going to require some touch-up here. I got paint in that. Wasn't planning to do blue touch-up, but I guess I will. Anyway, this one's done except for the touching up part. So there are these teams that have good records, but they don't, you watch them play, or you look at the point spreads that they've had in their games, and you go, no. In fact, I think, there's one division in the National Football Conference. That's where Tampa Bay is, the team, Tom Brady, new Tom Brady team. They are leading their division with a losing record. Actually have lost one more game than they've won, and they are the best team in their division. So if that continues, they will be in the playoffs, and probably there'll be at least two, maybe way more, but at least two, probably closer to 5 teams that will have better records than they do that didn't make the playoffs, just because of how they're kind of arranged this year and how they're playing. And then you got college football, and it's getting to be bowl season now. I think, what did they have? They just had all of the conference championships all over the country, right? It's probably how many there are. Dozens. So some of the teams with really good records won and some didn't. Some people are going to be really sad because the New England Patriots of college football, the Alabama, the Crimson Tide, are not going to be in the Final Four playoff thing this year. Thrilled by that, and other people will be sad. So that's something else you can argue about when you talk about football. But it looks like the season happens and everybody's got a bowl. Bowl of Fritos bowl, and a bowl of Tostados bowl, and a bowl of guacamole bowl, and a bowl of oranges, and there are a billion. I guess there's no FTX bowl this year, though. I remember ages and ages ago that there were 8 bowls, and they were played on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. At least those are the only ones we ever heard about. There might have been more, but those are the ones that they showed on television, where you went when you went to your relative's house for New Year's Day after the New Year's Eve. You had to do something. You had to fill the time. So you turned on the TV and you watched bowl games played between college teams that you never really cared about at all. But it was something to do, so you watched those. And I remember the bowl we watched a lot was the Rose Bowl. Mainly because of the parade in the morning, and said, "Oh wow, that's really cool what they do with all those flowers." Because all the floats in the Rose Bowl parade were supposed to be 100% covered with real foliage. Say that when I touched this up originally with the blue paint, and I did it twice. There's a fair amount of touching up to do on these chapped walls. Let's see. So, we got bowls. Oh, I was saying, I'm babbling here to fill the time, right? You have to be entertaining during the relaxing painting. And what's more relaxing than arguing about football? So, one of the arguments you can have is, for example, should there be so many bowls? Does it really matter? I think they're just ways of, making money for college football teams. or their athletic departments or whatever. I know that the money from the bowl games does not go to tuition relief. I'm pretty sure that that's a pretty low priority for the use of the money, is to like reduce the cost of going to college by 10% or something. Something to argue about. We'll start and where should the money from the bowl games go? Argument. Anyway, yeah, so we used to watch the Rose Bowl. Part of that was because I grew up in Wisconsin. Years were part of the Big Ten. And we kind of, over time, got to know which, I was a kid then, we were kids, so we got to know which universities were part of the Big Ten and whether we should care about it or not. One year was, occasionally the Badgers got into the Rose Bowl. Some of the time when they got into the Rose Bowl, they won, so that was a big Wisconsin thing. Are there any Big Ten schools that never got into the Rose Bowl? It's kind of like asking, are there any NFL teams that never got into a Super Bowl? And there are. I think there's like maybe 3 that never played in a Super Bowl. I know the Detroit Lions are one, because we're in Michigan now. We got the Lions here, and they've never been to a Super Bowl. Never got that far. I think Texans, maybe the team that used to be the Houston Oilers, maybe. I think they've never been to a Super Bowl. I think there's actually 3 of them, but I can't recall. I know one of them is a Texas team, and one definitely is the Detroit Lions. I think it would be good. The best thing about arguing about something like that is not looking it up. You can have the best arguments about which teams never made it into the Super Bowl if you never make an effort to get the facts. Because if nobody knows for sure, although everybody is very, in their argument, is very sure that they're right, but nobody really knows, you can keep that argument going a good long time. Or if somebody walks into the room and says, oh yeah, I just looked it up on football Wikipedia or wherever, these are the teams that have never been there, then the argument's over and the fun ends. So yeah, that's another football argument you can have. Yeah, another one is which teams have lost the most Super Bowls. If I remember correctly, one of those teams among the top 3 losers, I think, are the Minnesota Vikings. Because after the Packers, just their team got old after they won the first 2 Super Bowls. So after the Packer dominance, then there was, the famous Super Bowl 3 with Joe Namath beating Johnny Unitas and all of that kind of thing. I think the Minnesota Vikings actually went to the Super Bowl like 4 out of 6 or 7 years. They were just there all the time, at least 4 times. And they lost every time. They were like one of the best 2 teams in the entire league for a really long period of time. Then another team, I'm trying to remember who it was. I keep thinking it was the Cincinnati Bengals, because they had the really cool striped helmets, you know. I think they did the same sort of thing, that they were a really dominant team that went to the Super Bowl over and over and over again. 3 or 4 times, and they lost every time. One of the Bulls, but it's in college. The Bulls are starting at college level. One, something you can argue about is football. Like I said, you can then get to the meta argument about what is really football. What we call soccer is really football. But if you call soccer football, what do you call what? I guess it's called American football. But then there's other variations. Like there's Canadian football, which is similar to American football. What they still call the field was like 5 or 10 yards longer, and there were only 3 downs instead of 4. Not sure why variations. That, and then there is this thing, I think they still play it, called Australian rules football, which didn't have too terribly much resemblance to what we call American football, or just plain football. Almost, I think, almost more similar to rugby than to what we call football. I mean, you could look up all the variations, things that are called football, but the purists will say that the only real football is what we call soccer. So that can be the other's football. We can carry on. So I guess you can, if you have to put an adjective in front of it, like American football or Australian rules football, then what you're saying is that it's not football. With an adjective in front of soccer football, and they don't call it that. It's just So the big deal right now is the World Cup is going on. It started with 2 teams. I think they started with 32 teams, and they got it down to 16, and they're whittling that down to 8 now. And in the round robin, sorts of upsets. And teams like Germany didn't make it into the final 16. Other teams like Senegal did. There were upsets and surprises. Sometimes you wonder, if your team is definitely in, and the team that you're most worried about is in your little cluster, your little group of 4. And they need to win their game in order to get into the 16, but they also need you to win your game, because you're playing an opponent that, if they score a point, would get into the finals instead of this other rival team. And so it's like, how honest do you play this? I know that there are some teams that just as a matter of course, they got their 6 points after the first 2 games. They're in no matter what happens. They will play their reserve team, basically. And I think that's okay. In most sports, you don't want to take a chance of somebody getting hurt when it doesn't, make any difference in terms of how you end up in the tournament. You see that in American football. The team is like 5 games ahead in their division. They've got home field advantage all the way through the playoffs. It doesn't matter if they win or lose the last game. They'll put their starters in, maybe not at all, maybe just for the first couple of plays, because they want them to be rested and not injured when they get into the next round. So that seemed to happen in the round robin, the last games of the round robin. And I think it might have made some difference. There were a couple of teams that won their last game pretty convincingly, but they didn't make it into the round of 16 because teams, they played their second string, and they didn't win their game, or they tied or something. Okay, that's going to require a fair amount of blue touching up. And I'm going to do that now because I want these to dry while I'm doing washing and all the rest of this. That whole set over here, I'm going to do the gray wash on that. I want to be able to wash these too, but they need to, the paint needs to be dry before I do that. So since there's some blue touching up that needs to be done, I want to get that done now. Just a tiny little bit when there's hardly any blue paint left. I'm hoping enough. Yeah, it's enough at the bottom here so I can these wall pieces. One of the reasons that these require more touching up than some of the others is that the paint is nearly gone in this bottle. They're viscous. I probably could thin it, but that would require even more effort. But yeah, the paint's nearly gone, and so when it dried, it kind of pulled away from itself a little more than usual. I'm going to be washing here, and will need the space. It's not unusual. I'm doing this blue touch up here. That when I start doing the blue wash, I mean the wash on these, the gray wash, and I see even more spots that needed to be touched up. And sometimes I can just get away with hitting them with a little extra of the dark wash. Unusual, but sometimes even after giving it like 3 or 4 lookovers, there'll still be spots. Case here today. No idea how I got that brown paint there. It seemed to have been able to get it onto my finger without even knowing it. Let's see where that came from. Yep, so I'm not sure how long the show will go today. It might end up a little early, depending on how quickly I get the washing done and a couple of the other bits that I'm going to do. Everywhere. Must have been like the very last thing that I painted, where the paint was clumping on the brush, that kind of thing. Anyway, yeah, get to watch a large amount of little detail touching up. It's everywhere here. What I'm hoping is that the little touching up and the accent feature walls will dry before I come back to washing those. That'd be too hard to do. So, yeah, we're moving along here. Clean this off. So amongst the many brushes, this one, which I managed to get actually really quite clean last week. Yeah, that's the brush we're going to use for the wash. So this bottle is really a mess, as you can see, because on one of our streams, you can go back on YouTube and look at it. When I put it on this stirring here, this thing, looks like it's just vibrating. It's mixing the paint really nicely inside. Look, it's actually rotating. And I put this in upside down because I wanted it to, stir thoroughly. And basically what it did is it unscrewed the cap. And it coated the entire top. Imagine that, all covered in black ink. And imagine my hand that was holding it, also covered in black ink. And then you can imagine that I wasted about a quarter of it and made quite a hideous mess. So, okay, what we're going to do now is adjust the camera here, is start to work on washing all of those tiles. And this one that I missed. Once I wash them, I want them, wow, look at that. Great big white spot right there. Yeah, that's too big to ignore. On the doorway there. See what I said? I mean, you go over these things like 4 times, and then you still find that there's places that need it. Anyway, there's another one up here, right on the top. Oh, like it got chipped off. Anyway, yeah, go along. You think you're making good progress, and then you find that there are flaws in your work. Anyway, yeah, I need to separate those tiles because when they're washed on all of their surfaces. And they can't be held together like that. So I'm going to take this cardboard out underneath. Very nice way to transport them. Move some things I probably should have moved much earlier on, including the mouse. It's important to take the time to knock a bunch of things over while doing that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pieces out, wash them, and set them up. And hopefully there'll be, little bits of space between them so that they can dry without rushing into each other. And the other thing I'm going to do, since I'm going to be touching all of the surfaces, I know I'm going to get stuff all over my hands, is I'm going to put some gloves on. So that hand cleanup is a little bit easier later. Anyway, let's go in here. I had a fair amount of success watching last week, so hopefully we can keep that going here. That should be the first 2 pieces. Squeeze this out. Start by doing this one that hadn't been done. And I'm going to put that way over there with the other set where it belongs. So, get back in the swing of things here. What I'm going to do is go back and forth, and I want to get it into the crevices, like mortar lines between the blocks. And at the start here, it's like last time, there's way too much on the brush. So I want to work fairly quickly and get that thread somewhere else so that this block doesn't become just way too dark. the floor. Yeah, this happens for a couple of reasons. One is at the very beginning, there isn't any soaked into the brush, so it's actually a little bit hard to modulate the amount of wash that gets onto the brush at the start of this effort. Take it off, brushing over it, and putting it in places where we want it. And then even later, this brush, sometimes if you touch it against the pool of wash here, it will absorb it like a sponge. Then you can inadvertently also get way too much on the brush. And then that tile will be much darker than the other tiles, and it won't look good in comparison. I think I salvaged that, including on the floor. Get the sides. Yeah, it looks shiny on camera too. It looks shiny here because it's wet. As it dries, it gets pretty matte. Anyway, you can see the difference between a washed and unwashed one now. And you can see how it changes the color so it looks more stone-like, and it highlights all the surface contours. People will use a dry brush technique to do this, but because of the volume of the number of tiles that we're doing, and also because of the skill of me, we found that using the wash technique makes them look really pretty good, pretty nice. Look faster, and even more importantly, a little more consistently than if I tried to dry brush these things. I have to say that the cut stone, which is a much smoother surface, is easier to do than this rough stone. And I don't mind it at all puddling in the mortar joints. I want it to puddle there, but I don't want it to puddle too much on the surface of the blocks. I mean, one or two to make it really one or two dark blocks. See, like here where it puddled in, I think that's fine. Basically, I'm kind of working this in to make sure that it gets down into the mortar joints. And then I can brush over it to make the surface look more uniform. For the puddles, that sort of thing. The other thing I need to try to do is make sure that I get the sides and the top Because I think on the other set that I did, I mean, that whole pile of them that I did, I think I missed a couple. I missed that top. I know the one top, and I think I missed the sides of one. I'm not sure now, because they're all kind of stuck together there. Okay, having a hard time getting the wash into the space down there against the wall. There we go. I want to get it between the blocks. Definitely there. And then brush it across the top of the rough surface of the floor. One face of the wall. And then we'll give ourselves some more. We get the floors kind of uniform without leaving too many brush marks. Here, this particular one, right here, it's really dark. I don't know if I can rub any of that off or not. I'll try, I think. Kind of, yeah, I think that helps. Just got way dark over here. Okay, so I'm just pushing those up there. So yeah, now that I needed to get this working right. Started getting back into football. So we were talking about how, you all get together on Thanksgiving and you can't talk about religion or politics because somebody will be offended and they'll get an argument, and then you won't talk with each other again until next Thanksgiving when you get back together and argue about the same things. So what is it safe to talk about? Because whatever you talk about, you're going to end up arguing about. So we decided that it would be safe to argue, might as well just, get right to it, argue about football. And so one argument you can have about football, especially now with the World Cup going on, is what is really football. Because, here in America we call football soccer, and we call what other people call American football, football. So if there's people doing different things, they're obviously has to be an argument because there's a disagreement. So one thing you can argue about is what is really football. You know, so it's football. Football is American. You have to add an adjective to what we call football in order to say it's American football. And then we expanded that to talk about, you know, you got Canadian rules football and you got Australian rules football. And Australian rules football is very much not like either soccer or American rules football. So is that really football? Well, yeah, it is in Australia. It's Australian rules. But in Australia, do they call it Australian rules football or do they just call it football? That I don't know. Well, what we do know, though, is that the best arguments are the ones where you never look up the facts, because then the argument would end. You know, not only would the argument end, which takes all the fun out of it then, but there would be a winner or a loser, and then that has its own issues. So, yeah, when you're having that kind of argument, like in Australia, do they just call it football, or do they have to call it Australian rules football? Right? Well, unless you happen to have a relative over from Australia, how would you know that? You know, you could probably look it up on the internet, but then you wouldn't know whether what you were looking it up was accurate or whether it was just somebody who was contributing to the argument. And even if you had a relative over who lived in Australia, whether they were actually Australian or just lived there, I mean, you don't know that they're really even telling the truth about what they call it in Australia, because, you know, it's a Thanksgiving argument. And if they're from Australia, you know, maybe they're really enjoying watching people argue about something they don't know anything about. Not necessarily just because they're Australian. You know, they could be from anywhere and still enjoy that kind of thing. So they might just lie in order to keep the argument going. No, that could happen. And so, yeah. So there's all sorts of different levels of arguments one can have when you're arguing about football. And then if you eventually decide that, you know, you're tired of that, and that we're Americans, so we're just going to call it football, and this other game's soccer. And if other people don't like it, well, you know, we're Americans, so too bad, right? And we don't care about that game anyway, because, you know, it was really nice, and I guess we had a team in the World Cup, right? Yeah, I guess it was a team. Were they very good? Well, they made it into the final 16, but then they lost right away to the Netherlands, to this Dutch team. So I guess they weren't really that good, because anyway, if they were real athletes, they'd be playing real football instead of this soccer game. So that, you know, you could actually get like everybody in the room to agree at that, because that's America first kind of thing, a little xenophobic without really, you know, discriminating against anyway. That could be a safe argument, but we're just going to call it football because that's what it is. And besides, that's what it says on the TV. It's like all these games they're playing on Thanksgiving, and they're all called football games. So can TV be wrong? No, they wouldn't call it football if it wasn't really football. So by that time, you're on your like sixth football game, and you don't care about the World Cup anymore, because not that you ever really did very much, but these Dutch people beat the American people. And then there's all these other countries that are playing, and you've heard of some of them, you know. Oh yeah, I heard of Spain and England. We beat them once in a couple of wars, so But they made it through to the final 8, even though they didn't play very well at all in the round robin. I guess they were just resting up. I don't know. So yeah, there's these other countries, and then there's like some countries, and you go, oh, Senegal. What the heck is a Senegal? This is the Thanksgiving discussion. Football. Senate. I don't even know what that is. Is that a country? How did they manage to get a team into the World Cup? And you do that and then you go back to watch one of the football games, real football, on TV, because you cheer a little bit because somebody makes a really great play. Makes a 35-yard run and breaks a bunch of tackles and stuff. That's always fun, and everybody agrees that was a good play, even if they didn't like the team that did it. Yeah, so then there's the World Cup, and that's going on at the same time, and there's all sorts of controversy about that stuff. If you're an American at Thanksgiving, you don't really care about that very much. What you do know is that it's always a surprise when the Lions win. And they've actually won a bunch of games this year. It's kind of occasionally they have been showing signs of being a really good team. Okay, well. Interesting. This is an inside corner, so there's this little post where the walls join, and then there's a big floor area. Anyway, yeah. Anyway. We have to talk about something, so why not talk about football? And it's too much on there. I need to grab. If I wipe this off of here, there's just way too much wash on the floor. I needed to go somewhere else, so I'm just grabbing another one and putting it on there as I'm brushing it off of here. I don't really want to waste it by just wiping it off on a paper towel. So we'll just put it on here. Brush this down as much as I can. This tile doesn't get too much darker than the rest. Dab it off a little bit. Yeah. Not great. But that seemed to have saved it pretty well. Mind if there's a bunch that gets down between the floor tiles that I want darker, but I don't want too much on the tiles, especially on the floors. If there's one that's way darker than all the rest, sometimes with a wall you don't see it as much because of the angle, but if it's on a floor, you really see it. These posts are, there's not much to them, but it's a little challenging because there's no big surface area spread the wash against. Move kind of quickly and spread it all around the coast, and then other places. It's moving along pretty quickly. Water jumps here, and then brushing across to get it so it doesn't pool up too much on the surfaces of some of the blocks. Covering it really doesn't take much of this wash to color, change the color and the texture of the surface. Trying to get just the right amount on the surface so that it gives it the effect we want without just darkening it too much. That space there between the blocks and the wall, that's really the hardest to reach with the wash and also with the base coat when I do touch-ups. Oftentimes this is the place that needs the most. Okay, moving along here. Okay, into the, how many were there? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 15 of these, plus the pool in the middle. The pool in the middle is cool. I'm actually going to be painting a base coat inside the pool after I get the washing done. But just like I'm going to be painting the nozzles for the traps, painting the pool. And the decision was that this is going to be a green pool, a green slime pool. Occasionally, underneath me on the stream, these little pictures of things pop up. And one of them is this set, the Necromancer Lair set, with a green slime pool. I think we also have a purple one and a red one. Purple being purple slime, and the red one being blood. this one is going to be green. And it's interesting, even though the base, after the realistic water is put in, and then the other colors are put in and swirled, you don't see the base coat. I think it gets like 99% covered. Still, you want it to be green, because if it does show through, you don't want it to be that sand color, the primer color. You know, washing this set, Necromancer layer set, I'm going to do the base coat on the pond, the pool that is in the center of the set. That's a really cool piece. I'm also going to be washing, as I mentioned much earlier, the trap walls that go into the Dungeon of Doom set that I watched last week. As well, even painted them, base coated accent colors and things, and they're ready to be washed. And after these, and then, depending on how much time is left, and it looks like there will be, I might start working on the base coat of our alternative color. This base coat is blue with and accent stone, and our alternative color is gray with a wash. And it also looks very stony, but it has a different, anyway, it's just a different option for some of the sets that we do, some of the stone sets. So there are some pieces over there that have been primed, that if there's time yet today, I will begin to base coat. You know, it looks like it's likely there will be. This the washing part. There's a lot of tiles, but the washing part goes pretty quickly. In fact, it has to go pretty quickly because this stuff will start to set up, and if the color distribution isn't right, there isn't much time to rebrush it. Change. This is the pool. I'm going to do that last. You see, it doesn't take much of this wash to highlight the contours, the texture, and to recolor the blocks. The first time we did this, you know, you read about it and watch videos and things. The first time we did this, we actually used red as a base coat. It was a red granite dwarven mine structure. And so we had red as a base coat, and it was very red. And we said, well, let's put some wash on it. Let's see how that looks. It's supposed to make a big difference. And we were just have to say, it's really surprising how just this little bit brushed over the surface of the base coat and bring it alive. Remix this. Doing this, the other thing I tell myself is that if I really mess one up, one is just way darker than all the rest, it's just, you can always repaint the base coat. The paints are thin enough, and the texture is strong enough and bold enough that if you really needed to, could just take the base coat, repaint the whole thing, like especially on a floor or something, and start over on it. Probably could do that several times. Not that I really want to do that. I definitely don't want to be redoing tiles. But if I needed to, or if on final inspection, Nikki and Alexis look at what I've done and they say, well, these are almost all good, but this one really sucks. It just stands out. It's way too dark. There's no way to salvage this. Pull out the base coat, paint it over, start over, and you lose the time that it takes to paint it and repaint it and dry it, but at least it'll look good. I'm doing my best to make sure that the color is uniform. And I get all of the surfaces. Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't work, it's just paint. Can be resurfaced. You keep asking for a hot pink one. I actually did buy some pink paint. So, little one of these nice things like this of pink, and I don't know where it went. It came with a bunch of other stuff that I also don't know where it went. Some extra washes and base coat paints. But it's not here with all the other colors. So I'm not sure. There's a little box of paint somewhere. Some of the washes and accent colors that we use frequently, and within that is pink. So I don't know. I'm not sure where that went. Anyway, yeah, there's some of those paints are actually important to have. There's one of them. There's a couple of tubes tubes, I guess I'll call them, containers of the wash that we use on the floors, the smoky ink. And sometimes it's a little hard to get the smoky ink, but I got a couple of those. And they are wherever the pink went, and that's where that is as well. So at some point it's going to be important to track that down. You know, if you wanted to, you could special order a pink pool. We charge you for the time and materials, and then you would have your own personal pink pool. Yeah, we have a hot pink paint somewhere, and I don't know where it went. The package arrived while I was away. Yeah, if you want to, you can special order a pink pool. I'm sure Nikki would be happy to do that for you, if we can find the pink paint. Happening here is I took the ink, the wash off the top of the bottle, and got a little bit more on the brush than I wanted to, so I'm trying to brush this off. I think I'm actually going to have to wipe it off. It was enough to get the floor done. Okay, so we're down to, for this set, this double doorway. There's two doors that open in the center here, nicely hinged. So I'll do the sidewalls first and the big floor area. I think that, you know, those of you who have been watching me do this for a while know that the door frame may end up being wood or metal, and so it would be painted over with whatever color of the material that we use for the frame. But for now, I'm doing it the same color as the stone in case we want to just leave it stone. Be done. So it's easy to change it. It would be difficult to, if we said, well, you know, the way it looks now, you should have put it, you know, we wanted to be looking like the stone, and we didn't paint it, and it was just sort of left unpainted or partially painted. It would have been difficult to go back and do that. So I decided to keep our options open by basically making it look like the stone, and then having the option to be painted some other color. Carefully, of course, because if you get too much in the surrounding area, the touch-up becomes pretty tricky. in these areas between the stone here, and then brush the stone floor. There's a big surface area here. I don't want it. I want it to look fairly uniform. If one of the stone pavers is a little darker than the others, that's really not too bad. But you know, you don't want it. You don't want it to be like a really dark one next to a really light one. And what we've got here are some big white spots. Feature. White spot to be a black spot. Maybe if I can get like a drop of this just on this. There's a reason why, because paint never got into it. This isn't going. Okay, well, this is the double door. Is usually have to take it off, but last part is this pool, and it's mostly just want to get in between the blocks on the top, give it some color, make it look kind of uniform. Do the inside as well. This part here is likely to be covered with whatever the bubbly paint is. It's hard to tell where it will start and end, but so paint this around like that and then get it into the spaces between the blocks as much as I can. It's okay to squeeze a little more out because I've got the trap walls to do yet. Just got the floor around it. Right down those the corners. I think they got a little too much ink on them. I'm just going to wipe them out. back after this dries. Take off the little pieces of paper towel there. And I'll be painting the bubbly bit in the inside there with a green color. That's the green base coat. That. Now, what I've got left are these trap tiles. Reaching right over the vent for the trap, because I want to try to get the function here fairly uniform. Pushing it over. Yeah, I know I'm handling this in a really awkward way, but I tried using the holder, and it just, with the amount of surface area and the way it has to be brushed, it didn't hold, and it was just flying all over the place. So I found that I really haven't been getting fingerprints on it, just because of the nature of the wash. And anyway, it works okay. So there's one. Top. And no brushes, so it's pretty uniform. With the base coat, if I were touching it like this, it would pull the paint away. It would be kind of a disaster. But with this, luckily, it doesn't even leave fingerprints, so I'm able to hold it, which is nice, because not being able to hold it would have been, it just would have been very difficult. Okay, and as it turns out, I have just exactly not enough to do the floor. I need like one drop, and maybe just the stuff that's in the bottle cap. Yeah, there's a lot on the brush, so yeah, get this done this way. Basically using up everything that's on the brush to get the sides done, and that will be that. Those will need to dry before I can paint the vents for the trap. Then paint the pool. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to paint the base coat for the pool. And then it will be time for a break. Get the paint out of here. So here is the pool. And this volley area here needs to be green. So I'm going to use this brush. I'm actually going to put the paint in there and push it up to the edges here of the pond. We'll give this a good stir. Used this technique with the cauldron before. I think it should work okay. Let's put more paint in if I need to, but it doesn't waste any paint. So I'm just going to slide this around and push it to the edges. It's a very bright green, but it dries to, it's like with a lot of paints. It gets darker as it dries. And pretty much, I'm just trying to cover the surface here. The almost none of this will show after the realistic water is put in. But we want to make sure that if there are spots that aren't covered by the realistic water and the swirls that are worked into it, that you don't see the primer color underneath or the gray from the stone. These bubbles actually show through as bubbles later. This print is pretty neat. In fact, I should talk about this particular one. Alexis did an amazing job with this pool. I'm doing an amazing job of, seriously, I can't even get the paint up to the edge, a raised edge without slopping over. So this print, 3D tile, actually was originally 4 pieces. Or 4 2x2 tiles, and they quad quarters. They came together in the center. And if they were just magnetized, they would leave a gap. And I mean, if we wanted to try the realistic water in the pond, in the pool, but with the gaps between the tiles, it would just flow right through. It would just not hold. So we glued them together. We epoxied the pour together, and then got this putty that you use, plastic modeling putty, to fill in the gaps. They still showed. I mean, no matter how much we put in there and we sanded it down, they still showed. And so Alexis basically took the floor and turned it into just one 4x4 tile, so that the whole thing was printed as a solid piece without any of the gaps. And you know, the first time we did it, it was pretty cool. I mean, it was kind of like a proof of concept. Can we make this pool work with the realistic water and the swirls of the paint? How would it even look? Would it even work? And it worked okay. And so she put this together like this, so that there are no seams of it anymore. And we accidentally created some bubbles in the test that we did. And we thought, well, you know, it's a bubbling pool. It actually looks pretty cool. And so she added bubbles to this print. And when the realistic water is shallow enough that bubbles show through as bubbles. It's pretty neat. This is a really cool feature. When these are done, they look just amazing. Okay, so there's the base coat on that. Set that aside and put the brush in the water. Let me see. Hold on just a second. We had no idea if this realistic water stuff gonna work or not. You know, how will it look? What can we do in terms of swirls? So we got a bottle cap, pretty high tech, and did it here. So we painted the bottom of this bottle cap, put the realistic water in, put some spots of paint into the realistic water, and then swirled it around. Actually, the swirling wasn't even that hard to do, because once the paint got into the realistic water, it started to diffuse. And so some of these tendrils like that are it's just the way the paint is. You put a little blob of black paint there, and it swirled around, and the effect came out really well. And you can see, I mean, the shiny surface, it looks like it's still liquid. And you can see where maybe you can see, maybe not, there's little rough spots on the surface that look like bubbles. So that came out really nice. And so, there's a green one there on screen. That's what it looks like when it's complete. There's a purple one. I think the purple came out pretty well. The blood looks good too. That was before the green one. Okay, so those all need to set. Those are done, and they need to dry. And they look okay. These two tiles here, I need to paint the vent for the trap. Paint that brass. And then we have another set. There are some parts of the set that are primed that are going to be painted gray as the base coat, as opposed to the blue that we've been using. So when I get back after break, what I'm going to do is paint the vents for the trap tiles. Paint the fire and gas emitting vents. And then I am going to bring over the primed tiles and start painting them the base coat gray. And we can do a compare and contrast with the ones that were done in the blue. Those probably are not going to dry quickly enough to do the accent blocks. And that's the material that I've got left for today. So once I get that base coat on, we'll probably be finished. I'm going to take a little bit longer break. It'll be 15 minutes. Hi, Essie. Thanks for joining in. Just in time for break. I'm going to take about a 15-minute break here. Hydrate a little bit, maybe grab something to eat. See who's winning in the World Cup so that we can have arguments about football. Yeah, so there's that. This is the color I'm going to be using. Just going to be using brass for the vents. And then I think the color neutral gray. Neutral gray is the color we'll be using for the neutral gray. That's good in terms for arguments and things. So that's the color we'll be using for the base coat on those other blocks. I'm going to take these off. Managed to buy like 1,000 of these things, so we're prepared. And I will be back in about 15 minutes. See you soon. Hello, back from break. So what I'm going to do here is paint the vents for the traps. Looks like stuff is, it's drying up around on them anyway. I can do that in the brass. We now have discovered that the door frames, all of the door frames on everything, are going to be wood. So what I might do, and wood means the same wood colors and patterns. Okay. So should I put the Be Right Back screen back on now that I'm back? Okay. So the same combination of base coat and wash as we're using for like the Tavern Warehouse set. Yeah, so maybe I'll start working on door frames. They're a little touchy, because especially where they meet the floor here. So we'll see. But before that, I want to get these done, these traps. So I'm going to stir up the brass paint. And didn't need much, just a couple drops. So let's see if I can do this without having to redo other things. I'm just painting up to an edge. Wouldn't be terribly challenging. A little tricky around the edges because there's like little berths. Getting the bolts in the corners. Yeah, that's the most challenging part of it. You get around the edges first and then fill in. I think that's the safest thing to do. And I want it to look, pretty decent from the top. Okay, and I can fill this in. So that's it. That's the trap paint. Much paint in the middle there. It just sort of slipped into the right. Before and after. We need to make this one other one an afternoon too. And there's a tiny bit of paint there. That's not what I want. I have to fix that somehow. We have to, yeah. Slip will be a challenge. Okay, what we're going to have to do is maybe a multi-step process. I'll have to see how it looks with just the blue on it. Let's see whether I need to put a dot of wash on it as well, but I need to touch that up. And we'll see if it jumps out or not. Otherwise, I might need to put a tiny drop of wash in it as well. Okay, so those are the vents for the traps. Put those over there. I'll try to remember to take a look at that later. So there's a whole lot of door frames. The closest one is this double door. And apparently, these frames are all going to be painted wood. And we have a kind of standard wood. It's paint called Flat Earth with a smoky ink. And it looks really nice. It's a very nice look. I can't show it to you because they're put away somewhere. I'm not sure where. But make sure I have the right color combination. And I'm going to actually start painting the door frames. And what I'm hoping will happen is that I won't get it on places I don't want it. Otherwise, I need to do like a tiny little bits of blue touch-up like I did before. Maybe with a little bit of wash on. We'll see. So I'm going to be doing a bunch of door frames. Put most of this stuff away. Keep this in case I need it. Yeah, we'll just see how this goes. There's a lot of them, so this will probably take a while. This jar of paint that's close to being done. No, I'm going to start on this one. The wash is dry. But when I put the wash on this wood, it's not going to be with a big brush slathering it around at all. Okay, I need to hold this on my knee, so I'm going to move the... Yeah. As I managed to get it off camera, I just need to hold it steady as I'm doing this. So this is the kind of stuff that sometimes will get off camera. I will be checking it periodically, but if it's off, forgive me. So this is the trickiest part here on the door frames. Is down where they meet the floor. Where they meet the wall, there's like a raised edge. You can get up to that pretty well, but where it meets the floor, it's just a 90-degree. These will take a while. edges, and then fill in the inside of the frame after these are done. The smoky ink wash is actually, I think, pretty, if I remember from doing the floors, it's pretty easy to work with, which is good. I was not going to be wanting to get it on the blocks, on the stone. Okay, so that's around the edges. I'm going to do the other edges on the other side, and then I'll do the fill-in. And then there's a whole bunch of door frames, so hunt them down. We will get them done one at a time. And then I'm not sure if this will dry. Probably not dry enough by the end of the stream today to do the wash. I'm going to not count on doing the wash today because we're just going to run out of time before these are drying. To say that this color is not terribly much different than the color we use for accent stones, is it? Doesn't look very good on its own, but that smoky ink wash really makes it look beautiful. And we tried a couple of different base colors, and the reason this one works is that it's actually light enough so that the wash shows. The wash itself isn't a full opaque color, but so this base color actually shows through, but the smoky ink is the predominant color then. Okay, let's see. That looks acceptable. So I just need to fill in this other brush will work. Making a disaster. Let's try. If it does, it'll go way faster. Okay, so maybe what I'm going to end up doing, since they're all pretty interchangeable for door frames, is I think what I'll end up doing is a small brush and get all of the borders done, and then use the big brush and finish them. So I'm going to go through here and just pick out door frames. Double. And then we'll get back to it. I'm not missing them, but it looks like I'm getting them. And that's what I just did. Okay. So this looks like we've got 1, 2, 3 single cuts, rough stone doors, a single, and a double. Okay, this will work. So we'll just plug away at these. I'm going to do the boundary areas with this smaller brush, and then use the bigger one to fill in, because that actually seemed to work okay. And then we'll see if they're dry enough to wash. It's always nice to just be done with something, but sometimes they have to wait until the next stream, because they need to dry. Yes, little nooks and crannies. It's hard to get the camera view down into it. Do the best we can. Before the break, we were talking about football arguments, and the reason we were talking about football arguments was, grief, how did that get on there? Brushed up against it? Okay, yeah. I'm just going to take care of that right away. Apparently I must have just bumped the brush against it. You got brown up on top of that. I don't want that to be there. Shoot. Okay, I just got some on my finger, and now it's just going everywhere. So I'm going to touch that up right away, because it's going to be a problem. if I forget about it. And I think these tiny little spots are okay without washing. If they're too bright, I can go back and just put a dotted drop of wash. But I just got a tiny spot on my thumb, and that's all it took. That's all it took to just be a mess. Okay, so now we will be super extra double cautious, I guess. This is one of those things where it'd be nice to be able to use the holder, but these tiles are just oddly shaped and too heavy, asymmetrically heavy, so that they don't hold in a sticky tack that one. World football. Japan was a surprise, sort of, getting into the final 16. Were they playing Uruguay? Which one's Uruguay they're playing? I'm not sure. But when I was upstairs, the game was tied 1-1, and they were going way into extra time. I guess, like they get into sudden death tie breaking, at least before they end up. But they don't do that anymore. It's so stupid. Where they just do penalty kicks. You know, you play for an hour and a half plus some extra minutes, and then the game comes down to basically goal shooting practice. And it's just, I think that's just absurd. You know, they'd be better off, I really think, playing extra periods. You know, just even if it's a sudden death thing, which is also kind of stupid in a way. Is not do a shootout. Everybody stands around and watches one person kick at the goalkeeper, and then they do it on the other side, and they come back and do it again. And it's like, you know, let's have goalkeeping practice. It's sort of exciting, but if it's You know, if you're going to play 90 minutes and it comes down to that, why bother with the other 90 minutes? Just cut it short. Just line people up and have them kick at the goal. What I'm doing here is noticing that as I was painting this, that painting up to the edge, really need to kind of paint over the edge as well. So at least you can give the impression of the door frame going around. I'm just carefully trying to paint a little thin line just so that it goes around the side. It doesn't seem to be as big a problem on the back. It's the way it's set up, but anyway, yeah, I think it's, I don't know how that game's going to end or what they're actually going to do to end it. But it was tied that late in the, it was tied past normal expiration time. So it'd be kind of interesting if Japan actually advances. So despite the upsets and the surprises during the round robins, which happen, you know, either because you come into it and it's your first game and you're not taking it as seriously enough as you should, and then you barely squeak in later before you start playing well. Teams are taking these, the knockouts they call them, because it's just one and out. And you're taking these much more seriously. So yeah, Japan is a serious power in football. Or football. Let's see. But so far there haven't been any real shocks in the knockouts. There's been 4 games. Everybody's expecting the usual outcome that the Brazil will win theirs, and Spain will win theirs. And then it gets down to 8 teams, and I don't know, there might be like one out of the 8 that would be a surprise, like a dark horse kind of thing. Anyway, that's that kind of football is going on. Attracting worldwide attention. Much more popular game. Watched by many more people than American football. People in the US watch American football. Using the adjective to distinguish it from real football. Okay, well, it's coming along, and I don't seem to have stuck my finger in the paint again. So that's an accomplishment. These door frames base coated in the brown. And then let's see how they dry. But what is it? We got an hour left. Yeah, I don't think it'll take a full hour. finish more door frames. I'll have to decide whether to wrap up a little early. We'll start base coating a gray set. Our stone sets will come in two base colors. One is the blue with dark wash. That looks a lot more foreboding. Or gray with dark wash. And those look a little bit more somebody's nice castle. At least that's the intent. We're finishing up the blue ones for the most part. There's still a whole bunch of tiles to do to complete all of the sets that are done in the blue base coat. They have yet to be primed, so they'll probably get primed this week, and I'll probably be working on them later. As I continue the saga of dungeon tiles. And right now I'm doing these door frames, getting the edges, I'll call them, the contact points between one color and the other. And then I'll use a larger brush to fill in that space there. It's the wooden part near the door frames. Get a wash. Smoky ink. It's the same color combination we used on the floors and the walls of the stucco sets that I did the week before last. And once they're washed, they look really good. They're beautiful. You wouldn't mind having that color on your floors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing about giving arguments, you can't talk about politics or religion because those arguments get too heated. You used to argue about football because that's what's on all the time. You probably could argue about other things too. You could probably argue about, I mean, with relative safety at least. You could argue about why 3 people all brought green bean casserole as their potluck dish. And they're really good at it. Instead of just sitting around going, I don't know, why did that happen? Someone really screwed up. And another thing, you could start getting into problem-solving mode. You could spend probably the better part of the rest of the evening talking about how you could. Sorry, I just got a little spot. I didn't want it, so I'm just popping out the other color here. You could get to problem-solving mode and talk about how you're going to assign potluck assignments for the next Thanksgiving. So you talk about, making like a spreadsheet or a matrix or something of all the dishes that you want to have at the next Thanksgiving. I mean, you want to have a grid, right? So you could list all the dishes, like say the rows. You have to argue about whether you put the dishes on the rows and who brings them on the columns or vice versa. So after like 20 minutes of arguing about which way that should go, I mean, those are the really kind of valuable kind of arguments you can have. You put the dish or the bringer of the dish on the row or the column. Eventually you decide that it's one or the other. It doesn't really matter at all. You eventually decide on which one you're going to do. And then you start with the grid. You finally, you figure out who's going to actually do the writing. And so has really bad handwriting and will never be able to read it, so it'll just be wasting our time. So has really neat handwriting, but doesn't want to. And this other person has equally neat handwriting, but had too much wine and can't really be trusted. And so you end up compromising by giving the paper to somebody who just like walked into the room and go, what the hell? And you just say, just write down what we say. Start listing the dishes that need to be brought. Green bean casserole. So you write down green bean casserole once. But you want 2 dishes of dressing. And since they might be brought by other people, eventually someone figures out that you need to write it down twice. You can't just put dressing with like 2 in parentheses after it, because then that would mess up and when you added who's going to bring it, then it would look like they have to bring two dressings, and that wouldn't be fair. Figure that out. Change a little bit there. And so you start listing all of the dishes. Somebody says, about some Jello ambrosia dessert thing, and everybody goes, that's awful. You'll eat that. But one person, that's the only thing they know how to make. So it gets on the list anyway. Stick their name by it. And the person who's keeping track of it all, in tiny little letters right next to it, goes Prince Yuck. So you can hardly see it. But then you've got that part of the grid already done. You get ambrosia jello salad with the person who's going to bring it. Get that part done, so you're really on a move. Anyway, yes, you list all of those, and you go to who's going to be bringing these things. And that can get pretty contentious because some people are really good at making dressing, and so they always get stuck making dressing, and they're really tired of making dressing. And they don't want to do it this year or next year. But the people who are left, who aren't assigned yet, just make terrible dressing. So eventually you have to, a compromise is reached between quality and equity of assignment. You're just going to have, you're going to have a bowl of really crappy dressing because the person who really makes the best dressing just will not do it. Just, nope, I'm going to do it again. Maybe the year after, next year. Anyway, you keep going around and around like that. Eventually, you end up with a list of all the things that need to be brought. Who is assigned to bring them? I think you're pretty much done. And there's only like 1/4 of one football game left on TV, and it's already a blowout, and one team is leading by 27 points already, and so no one really wants to pay much attention to it. Nobody cares about either of the teams anyway, so it's like time to go. And then as you're going, somebody who wasn't in the room looks at the list and says, Auntie Jean isn't going to be here next year. Remember? They're planning to go to Hawaii for a special occasion. That means that the assignments that you made, now one of them is unmade. So there's the crisis. Now you get another crisis. Everybody was ready to go. The football games are almost over. Something isn't going to be brought next year. Something that nobody really cared about. It's like like a macaroni salad or something that everybody's just as well at not having it. But, it turns out to be like the candy jams that everybody loves. I don't know why, but they do. So the whole thing is thrown into disarray. And they have to argue then not only about who is actually going to bring the candy jams, but because everybody already has an assignment. It's like, what is not going to be brought? Because, somebody's been assigned candy jams instead of what they had already been assigned. And so everybody gets stuck there for another like 20 or 30 minutes. And no one can, and you just can't agree because now there's more people in the room because the people who are in the other room, playing cards or doing something and not involved in the assignment of dish bringing, now have an opinion. Everybody's getting tired and grumpy, and finally somebody says, well, why don't you just take this list and, see what you can do to fix it and send it around to all of us, and we'll get back to you with suggestions and comments. And the person who's stuck doing it, they're just stuck doing it. Everybody's just leaving, and there's the list laying there. So they pick it up. And lo and behold, it turns out to be someone who's competent and concerned, believe it or not. One of the relatives who's competent and concerned enough to get the job done. Actually looks at, takes the matrix home and,
before the football games start on Sunday, emails it out to everybody. Well, you know, at that point, just begin to imagine what's going to happen. One is that some people they never read their email. And so you know that at a point in the future, it's going to be, well, you never asked me what I thought. And yes, I sent it out in email to everybody, including you. Well, you know that I don't read emails. You needed to mail it to me. I would have read it and gotten back to you if I'd gotten a paper copy. But it's your fault, you know, because you had everybody's email address and you thought, well, there's an email address. So here we go. Paula, if you come on this late, I don't know if you're going to get a special flip. Anyway, yeah, so that's one thing that'll happen is somebody will say, well, I don't read my emails. You should know that. Now I didn't have a chance to comment, and I don't like anything you did. So that's part of the disaster. And then somebody else will have a really strong opinion and say, this is the way it has to be. You got this totally mixed up. There's no way that, you know, John Smith is going to come up with cranberry sauce. That's just wrong. And yeah, I know you needed to do that to make everything else balanced, but that's just not going to work. And then somebody else will send back saying just the opposite. But you know, if that person wouldn't copy anybody else then, so you've got it. And you try to go back and forth and share everybody's comments with everybody. And then somebody else gets upset at you because they just sent their comments to you and you didn't expect it to go to everybody. And you thought that was the right thing to do because if you shared the comments with everybody, then everybody could weigh in, just like we had, like when we were all in the room together discussing this in the first place. But people are upset about that because they didn't want their comments shared. Except for the two people who sent their comments to everybody to begin with. And the people who got them, some of them were saying, who are you? Who are you? You know, sending your comments to everybody. You're just trying to impose your will on us. And so they're upset. The poor person who was stuck with the list about leaving the door makes one more effort and says, I took everybody's comments that I received into consideration and I snail mailed them to all sorts of people, and then I got some more comments back and I took all those into account and I sent out 4 different drafts of this, and this is the last one. It's 2 kinds of comments saying, why did we even bother, you know, making an effort getting back to you? You didn't do it the way I said I wanted it done. And a couple of people will say that because they were the only 2 who wanted it done that way and the other 10 didn't. But that doesn't matter. They didn't get their own way, so they're in a huff. And then there's 3 or 4 people who don't respond at all, so you have no clue what's going on there. And yeah, that goes on, and pretty soon, you know, it's like October 15th or, you know, October 20th, and everything's up in the air because everybody hates what everybody else suggested, and the last draft you sent, nobody liked it all. So it gets to be mid-November, and the last thing that gets sent out is, this is a disaster, everybody just bring what they want. So you add, and by the way, I'm not coming because this was so painful dealing with everybody, and all I've got is everybody telling me how awful I am. So since I'm so awful, I'm just not even going to bother coming. And of course, you know, that breeds a reaction. Is half the people say, God, we were so mean and stupid that now so-and-so isn't even going to be coming, when they were trying hard to make this work for everybody, and some other people are going, what a jerk, you know. We were just trying to help, and then they got into a whole huff about it, and they're not coming now. They're such jerks. It's just, as well, they're not coming. I don't want to see them. So that all happens. So anyway, people show up at Thanksgiving, and what's really cool about it is that you haven't even started talking about politics or religion or even football yet, and people are already all upset with each other because of what they said or didn't say, or the opinion they gave or didn't give, or the way they gave it, or isn't it sad that so-and-so can't even come because of the way we treated them? And no, it's not how we treated them. They're just being jerks. Everybody's mad and arguing before they even get in the door. And this year, there is a bowl of Jell-O ambrosia salad, because that never changed. The person who, that's the only thing they know how to make, made it. It also turns out they're the only ones who eat it. And this year there are no candied yams, none at all, but there are 4 green bean casseroles. Anyway, that's how you make sure that's not true at all, but it could be a Thanksgiving story. And you heard that because I needed to babble about something, and I didn't have anything more to say about football other than it'd be pretty cool if Japan won, but I don't know if they did or not. Getting these door frames done, painting in the rest of the frame with a bigger brush because it is like 10 times faster than using the little brush that I used to get the edges. Oops. I was able to pull that off just barely. I missed one of the base of this post, but I was able to get the paint down to it with this brush without making a mess. So it looks like we have like about a half hour left after I finish these door frames, and they're not going to dry in time to wash today because just these large areas, they're not going to dry that quickly. The parts I painted earlier, they're getting close to being dry. So what I actually will do then is I'm going to start putting gray base coat on some of those tiles that are sitting up to my left that have been primed but not yet painted. And those are the ones that will have a gray base coat. We haven't done that yet. But before I do that, I need to do a couple things. One is check to make sure I got this all painted. Paint. Put one of them away. It's the first time I put a paint away since we've been doing this. Okay, so let's try to clean these brushes here. And that is the big washing brush, and I'll be using this. Got pretty clean. This is the brush that I will be using for the base coat because it's got really nice soft bristles. It's wide enough to cover fairly well. Of course, I could use the one with the clear handle too, but this is the one I'm more used to using. Say that this paper towel is used up. Okay, so about a half hour left. I'm not sure how many I'll get done, but let me get started on it. Okay, we'll do a flip profile. Flip this toothpick. There's the gray side and there's the not gray side. Not gray. Gray wins. Okay. Space. I think the final frontier. These doorways are just kind of miscellaneously stuck everywhere in the other areas, but I don't want to put them back in that area because they need to be washed yet. I'm just going to be off camera here for a second and slide that stuff up out of the way as much as I can. Get these out of the way. And then this is the neutral gray I'll be using on the to be painted gray dungeon tiles. Let me grab a bunch of them here. There's a bunch of that. I'm going to kind of pile them up here, and when I get the gray on, I'm going to put them up there. Use many. Use many. And then decide what to do based on the space there is to put them and how much time is left. So on Wednesday, what I'll be doing is, if there's more base coating to do, and there probably will be, I'll be doing gray base coat. And I'll be putting in accent blocks. The accent blocks on these with the gray actually is a different color than the color I use for the accent blocks on the blue stone. This has been sitting around a little while, stirring. Yeah, so if I don't get the base coat on all of these today, and it's unlikely that I will, on Wednesday, the things I'll be doing is some additional gray base coating. Retouching these. And then washing the door frames for the ones that were done earlier, and then doing accent blocks on the gray ones that have been base coated, where the base coat has already dried. The same deal, getting the paint into those crevice areas there. Paint is quite a bit lighter than the blue was. It's a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit harder. Okay, I'm going to stir this up some more because it's not covering. We've never had that issue with this before. I don't know if you can see that, but it's really liquid. It's not covering very well. This is any better now. Hope so. I hope it's not like a inconsistent or bad problem. No, that's much better. So yeah, the pigment had apparently very well settled into the bottle. And stirring it up, including from the bottom up, has made a difference. The lessons I learned and I'm trying to remember right now is, in doing this, I can't really use the handle, is to hold it on the bottom and the top. The bottom doesn't get painted. That is not an issue then. The top does, but There's not much surface area, and it's pretty easy to see and touch up. So what I'm doing here is, it's not like smooth painting, and is making sure I'm getting the paint as much as I can into the mortar lines between the blocks. That's almost always where the touch-up is required. As much as I can do the first time, the less one has to do with the touch-up later. It's kind of a nice color. I mean, it's a real pleasant, soft, gray color, neutral gray. Unfortunately, okay, already that's an issue as the paint is pulling away from itself. And as it's drying on the floors there. It might have been because there was too much solvent in the paint that was on there before I mixed it again. Hope so anyway. We'll see how that goes. Now, yeah, unfortunately, it's a very nice color. It'd look good on a wall, maybe. Not just like a stone wall like this, but I mean like a house wall. If you wanted an accent wall, it wasn't vibrant, but really kind of relaxing to look at. This would actually be pretty nice for that. But when it dries, it's really lifeless, very flat. So it's one of the colors that we early on learned needed to be washed. And the wash can be fairly thin because it's a light color, and the dark wash shows against it even more than it does against the blue. So you have to be a little cautious with the washing. But it's one of those paints when you wash it, it really brings it to life. Actually, the mortar, even more than the blue, because it's so much lighter. Because it shows the contrast with the wash even better. Going around here looking at the vertical. So now I just need to get the top. Discovered that last time is that the swirly pattern of the filament on the top. The paint actually looks better if one swirls it around as well. Okay, well, we got one done. Got another corner here. One thing I didn't do, let's grab that back. Yeah. Because I want to look to make sure that I got. It looks like I did okay. Unfortunately, I messed this up. But I wanted to check the insides of these floor stones. They go down a long way, and they're pretty. That gap there is pretty deep. I want to make sure not only get the paint in the crevice there next to the wall, but also on the sides of the blocks, because that could show. actually a lot of texture in the print on the floor. You can see it better on the ones that were washed. But, you know, it's kind of a nice stone pattern. It's kind of swirls and divots and things. These walls are this combination of what you could almost consider to be detail work, getting the paint into the mortar joints, and broad surface work, which would be all the bricks. Bases of the bricks. So, yeah, anyway, at some point we actually will try the airbrush with more than just the primer. We'll try it with the base coat itself to see if it does a better job of getting onto all the nooks and crannies and joints and things or not, and whether it's faster. So it's that combination of efficiency and effectiveness, right? The quality of the paint job and how much time does it take. And then you try to pick a balance so you got really good quality but not an excessive like the old, you know, if it's an engineering joke or something, it's like better, faster, cheaper. Better, faster, cheaper. And the answer to that is always you can only have two. So the same thing is true with these tiles. Better, faster, cheaper. Kind of leaning toward cheaper. As I'm retired and I don't get paid anymore by anybody except Social Security, which is paying myself because I put that money in along with my employer. Yeah. And it's certainly not faster. I mean, this probably could be done faster, but then it wouldn't be better or cheaper. Do and get 20 minutes left. Yeah, I'll be able to get a few of these done. And a couple of them might even dry up enough. I can show you what it looks like when paint is dry. Compare the wet color to the dry color paints. Frequently very different color depending on their dryness state. That's why when you open, you know, you go to the store and you buy some paint so you can paint your walls. You then you very carefully pick out the paint swatch. You take 13 or 14 of them home, and you hold them up against the wall. All 4 square inches of the color patch. Just at all. Some of them are really tiny. They're like a little bit more than a square inch. So you pick your color. Maybe you even go out of the way and you splurge the $5 they charge for 1.5 ounces of paint. The sample color. You stick that on the wall and you get a spot on the wall, and you compare the last finalists, the last 3 or 4 finalists, and you pick one. And then you go and you buy yourself 2 gallons of the stuff. You can, and it doesn't look at all like the color that you picked. Changes so much when it turns. And you probably should notice that maybe when you did the sample. That's 1.5 ounce sample, but there wasn't enough of it really to see as the color of it in the jar wet as it's dried. Anyway, yeah, that can happen. So you look at this paint in the jar, and it's not the color it's going to dry to be. Near the end here, I know we had a great old time talking about arguments, things you could argue about, and I settled on arguing about football because why not? So I had a great time talking about football with various adjectives in front of it, in bowl games and things like that, and and then ran out of things to talk about football, and then went into a hypothetical situation about potluck passing and bringing to Thanksgiving dinners, and how you should just never really try to solve a problem like that, because then it just turns out to be worse than when you started. So that was the lesson we learned there. And now we're kind of wrapping up. What we accomplished today was washing the Necromancer set. I base coated the pool, the green slime pool that's going to be included with that set. Finished the walls for the traps, the Dungeon of Doom, the trap walls. Base coated the frames for the doors. And started a new base coat color, this gray that's used for to color for the stone sets. And this gray is finished with a wash, a dark gray wash, just like the ones that were base coated in the blue before. So I'm going to get a couple more of these done. I'm not sure how many. This one for sure. Maybe another one. And on Wednesday, I'll be finishing the base coat on the rest of these. If more stuff has been primed, I'll be working on those also. There'll be a couple of these that are dry. And we'll see. I'll try to time it so that the gray base coat, a lot of pieces are dry, so that I can start doing the accent blocks on the gray tiles, just like I did on the blue ones. And we'll get those done. And then I'll see about washing. Washing on the blue tiles, I think came out okay, but it's really sensitive on these gray because the gray is so much lighter color, and any variation in the, not really thickness, but the darkness of the wash will show up pretty heavily. I know we've got another color, it's a light gray wash. I know we bought that. I don't know if anyone ever tried it on one of these or not. I'm actually thinking it might work better. It's because the base color is so light. But that particular wash is in the same place as the pink paint that we were talking about way early in the stream. And that particular location is unknown to me. I don't know where the pink paint is or where the light gray wash is. There was a shipment of paint that came, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago while I was on vacation. And the stuff that was in there is, I don't know where it is. I'll just say that, I don't know where it is. There's a bunch of stuff in there that is actually kind of important to have in terms of extra bottles of base coat and washes. So, that's going to be a thing. Which one has to make a search? Anyway, yes, that's what I've done today. And what I plan to do on Wednesday is, assuming that, nothing changes in terms of stuff that's primed or the priorities that Nikki and Alexis set for the things that need to be done. When I sign off today, other than cleaning up, and just try to find those paints. When I think about it, it's kind of weird that I'm just here with all the rest of the stuff. It's like it got picked up and set down somewhere, maybe. And that somewhere isn't where everything else is. The other thing we'll see on Wednesday is the kind of touch-up that this gray paint requires as a base coat. Whether it leaves as many little white specks and spots and uncovered areas and things as the blue did, or whether it doesn't. Well, that will be another thing that we'll be finding out on Wednesday. as we are wrapping up again, I want to thank everybody who has joined in watching the stream. Also thank anybody who's catching this later on YouTube. If your views are very much welcome. If you can, I would ask you to consider becoming a follower, tuning in as we do more relaxing painting on almost every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sometimes there's a vacation. Sometimes there's just something that comes up and has to be done instead. I'm sure you all understand that. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 until 2, more or less. So thanks for doing that. If you really like what you see, there is an opportunity to support this stream as well as our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Dungeons and Dragons streaming 3 Sundays a month on Sundays at 2 on Twitch. Watch us there with a live chat. If you can't catch that, you can listen to the episodes on podcasts or watch them later and more often. Watch them more than once on YouTube. So please feel free to do that. And if you'd like to support all of these efforts, if you'd like to support Dice and Dungeons, we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/diceanddungeons. And any support that you'd care to give us would be very much appreciated. So again, thanks for joining in today or whatever day it is that you're watching this, either a live stream or later on YouTube. Tell your friends, tell your family, have everybody join in the Dice and Dungeons family. We're usually it's either me or Nikki doing painting. Lately it's been me. They've been very busy doing everything else, and I am trusted to do things like base coating and washing dungeon tiles. So, thanks again. And I will be finishing this one. And how much time is left here? Okay. I'll try one more. There's an inside corner. And that's basically a floor. And that'll go pretty quickly. There's one more. Just one more. In this case, there are quite a few mores. So I obviously am not going to get all of these base coated today, but 2, 3, 4. I think I'll have 6 plus an inside corner done. It's not quite half. Not quite half of them. So on Wednesday, I'll start with the base coating. And then, while those are drying, I'll be able to touch these up, because there'll almost certainly be some touch-up. And start doing accent blocks, if that's the priority for what needs to be done on Wednesday. Paint and crevices here. What we'll probably do is, I'll start by touching up the ones that I'm doing today. because I want those to dry. No. I'm going to start with the base coat on the rest of them. And then I'll do touch-up. Because usually those are really tiny spots and they dry really quickly. Start doing accent color blocks. And somewhere along the line, depending on how the timing looks in terms of, paint drying and stages of preparation and all of that, I will do the wash on the door frames that I painted today, because those need to be washed in order to be finished. They're probably dry now, but there isn't time to get them done on this stream, so they'll have to wait until Wednesday, and you'll see just how pretty the wood looks. Even a tiny bit of it in the door frame. There's not very much of it compared to like the floors and the walls on the tavern set. There's a beautiful transformation of the flat brown, that color that is on the base coat, and the finished color. Okay, well, they're the base coated, the gray base coated tiles. So this one's mostly dry, so you can start to see what it looks like. And there are all the door frames that need to be washed. And here is the paint that I've been using, and the splotchy table, and the messy brush. Wrap this up. And I think what I can do, no, I'm going to leave this work area open. I've got some of the tiles here. I'll just pick up more from the drying rack over there when I start doing the base coats on Wednesday. So, once again, thank you for joining in to Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons. Hope you appreciate it. Feel free to become a follower. Feel free to become a Patreon sponsor. Feel free to watch our Dice and Dungeons campaign on Sundays at 2. Have a good day, and see you Wednesday.